So, in my last video, talking about the Rams looking ahead to the 2020 season, I referenced at the beginning about how difficult it is just to make the Super Bowl, let alone win it, and then to have to turn around the next year and come back and be some type of contending team or even just make the playoffs. Like, it's an incredibly difficult road to navigate. And a lot of teams in the past have not been able to do so. Not even just getting back to the Super Bowl, but a lot of Super Bowl losers the next year can't even make it back to the playoffs. With the nature of the game and like how much parity there is and how little margin between the best and the worst there truly can be, I guess really, really tough. And we're going to find out what the San Francisco 49ers are made of this year because they're facing the same challenges and the same battles. They really are. As you're talking about a team went to the Super Bowl, NFC champs, had an actually pretty easy time of it in their two playoff games, honestly. Get to the Super Bowl and they're dominant the first three quarters. Looks like they're going to beat the Chiefs running away, and then the fourth quarter happened, and the house of cards ultimately imploded upon itself. Which sucks if you're a 49ers fan. Sucks for the players, the coaches, the organization, because you had a great year. You took advantage of that really soft first half of the season schedule, and hey, you can only play who you're scheduled to play. And they handled their business, and that's something that great teams do. And the 49ers in 2019, make no mistake about it, were a great team. They got off to that 8-0 start. You could say it was Cupcake City, and that's why. Hey, you've seen plenty of good teams that don't become great teams because they can't beat the cupcakes. The 49ers beat these cupcakes and dominated plenty of them. So that set the tone for me early on in the year that this team started to gain confidence and started to believe in themselves and started to think that, hey, big things could be possible here. And it was true. And the crazy thing about it is when you talk about the NFL and I talk about how thin the margins can be sometimes, you even look back at where the 49ers ended up. It was literally a few inches away from them not even having a first-round bye, let alone home field advantage. The Seahawks got stopped right at the goal line. If they score there, if they win that game in Week 17, it's the 49ers that lose that division. It's the Seahawks that win the division. It's the Seahawks that get the home playoff game. It's the freaking 49ers that have to go on the road in the first round, and now you're talking about potentially having to play 1, 2, if not 3 playoff games on the road with Jimmy Garoppolo as your starting quarterback. That's a very, very difficult, slippery slope for any team to navigate. So sometimes it just shows how fortuitous things can be, that you get 1 or 2 things to go your way can make all of the difference. And that's what it was. But now, when you think about the 49ers, it was a really good year to go from worst to first, and not just worst to first, but from picking number 2 overall to sitting there and making it to the Super Bowl. Like, that's a tremendous accomplishment and a tremendous achievement. And everybody involved with that organization, while they certainly feel disappointed, as they should be, the worst thing is to get that close and not be able to get over that mountaintop. That's the worst feeling in the world. Gotta be. But man, there was an awful lot for them to be happy and thankful and proud of for what they do. It was a validation of Kyle Shanahan until he went to the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter. It was a validation of John Lynch and the things that he did as a general manager. And even with some of the notable misses he had in the draft, some of the mistakes that he had made, still to be able to hit big in some key spots with some key guys. Like, there's a reason this team was in this position. But now they're going up against history. And you can sit there and minimize it all you want, but history is history for a reason. And if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to repeat it. The fact of the matter remains is I see a lot of people really pumping up this 49ers team and automatically assuming that they're going to win this division and be right back in the same spot. Even talking about them winning the Super Bowl. Excuse the hell out of me. I realize we just recently saw this, again, talked about in the last video. I'm going to talk about it again with the New England Patriots. But the Patriots are different, man. Belichick, Brady, that's a different deal. And they were able to make it to 3 straight Super Bowls recently. Win 1 against the Falcons, and even that took a 28-3 comeback to do. Lose 1 to the Eagles, and then come back the next year and beat the Rams. Yes, they lost 1 year and came back and won the next, but they've also played in a cupcake division for the past several years. So they're able to kind of coast through the regular season in order to make that happen. The 49ers don't have that luxury. The NFC West is tough. This is a tough division. It's going to produce battle-tested teams come playoff time. So the 49ers can't just sit there and think they're going to roll in and dominate in the regular season because of crap. They didn't even do that last year. You could say, well, 13-3 they did. Yeah, but even with that, you still got to the last game of the regular season against the Seahawks, that Sunday night game. How close was it to being entirely different? And the whole focus and shift is entirely different. You know what I mean? So you look at this 49ers team and you say, where do they go from here? How do they avoid that Super Bowl loser's curse? How do they get themselves back into the playoffs? What moves they need to make to potentially take that next step? Well, we'll find out whether or not they did what they needed to do. But they traded away DeForest Buckner to the Colts to get the 13th overall pick, which is really interesting. Like, Buckner was a huge part of their success on that defensive front four. It was him and Nick Bosa that really wreaked havoc all over the place last year, made others around them better. You know, when you specifically talk about guys like Eric Armstead, who got paid himself, and then you've got Dee Ford in the fold. But it was DeForest Buckner along with Nick Bosa that really made the difference. They were the bedrocks of that defense. So interesting decision for a team that just made it to the Super Bowl in part based off of the strength of the front four, that they made the decision that Buckner was the guy that they had to get rid of. You also had Joe Staley's now retired, so they made the deal to go out and get Trent Williams. And you know what? Worth the gamble, sure. Now, you can't just automatically assume that Trent Williams is going to come in and play like an elite level left tackle because, one, this is a guy that even when he was playing in the past few years had trouble staying healthy and staying on the field consistently. Let's not forget about that. And two, this is also a guy that sat out all of last year. So a guy in his early 30s sits out for an entire year at a position as important as left tackle. How well do you think he's going to do coming out of the gates? Like, he could potentially struggle. They kept guys like Jimmy Ward and Eric Armstead. Matt Breida's gone. In general, I will say that they kept a lot of their core together. Obviously, bringing in Trent Williams is an attempt to address one of the gaping voids on their team in the offensive line. Even when you talk about DeForest Buckner being traded, they probably think they got a similar level type of talent in Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. And maybe they did. And maybe this is one of these things that they think, on that defensive unit, that they didn't have to have a DeForest Buckner to still be very successful. And they could potentially be right. I just start to worry about teams, though, when you start trading away established, proven Pro Bowl, all-pro level guys at a position to then immediately draft their replacement and draft them high. Like, it doesn't feel like that's the best way to necessarily conduct business, but the great thing for Kinlaw is while he's stepping in and replacing DeForest Buckner, which could put some pressure on him, he's not in it alone. Like, he's not the foundation piece of this defensive line. Admittedly, that's Nick Bosa. And then they took Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver from Arizona State, for an offense that really needs somebody on the outside to make plays, outside of Deebo Samuel, that really needs somebody to be a consistent weapon that can take some pressure off of George Kittle over the middle. They've got to hope that this kid comes in as a rookie and is able to contribute something. If you're looking for reasons for optimism, as I mentioned earlier, this is a Super Bowl team that returns outside of DeForest Buckner. Pretty much everybody of relevance and importance on the defense. You've still got Nick Bosa, so you got a stud there. You got Fred Warner in the middle of that linebacking core, so you got a stud there. Even though he might not be the same player he was a few years ago, Richard Sherman is still a high-level corner, so he's a stud there. So you've got at least one notable stud on each of the three levels of your defense. That's a good building block for success, a good foundation for continued success for this team. You had no real significant departures from their offense, and maybe, hell, they'll actually get something out of Jerick McKinnon this year. They only had to watch him be sidelined the last 2 years due to injury. Now you bring him into the backfield with Mostert and Tevin Coleman. Like, this is a team that should still be able to run the ball pretty effectively, which was obviously a big key to their success last year. So there's certainly plenty of things that point to the fact that, while it is tough and challenging to get back to the Super Bowl a year after losing or even a year after winning it, for God's sakes, it's just really tough to get back in that position the next year. The 49ers have a lot of those same pieces in place that make you believe that they could potentially put themselves in that position. But I worry for this organization, for this team. The division, I think, overall has gotten tougher. Especially, I think Arizona will be better. Seattle's added Jamal Adams, and they have still by far the best quarterback in this division, Russell Wilson. So the division's tough. Will the Super Bowl performance haunt potentially both Jimmy G and this defense? Like against the Vikings and the Packers, Jimmy G just was really a non-factor. And that's not to knock Jimmy G, it's just they didn't need him. It just really didn't matter. He could make some throws and make some plays, but man, when the pressure was on in that Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, like that big bomb over the middle where he overthrew him by like 5 yards, you're sitting there saying to yourself, a big time quarterback makes that big time throw. He didn't. And you worry that it's those types of moments that start to poke some of the holes in Jimmy G. And I'm not saying he's going to get replaced anytime soon, but you're looking at this guy and you have to say, like, just how much are you really going to get out of him? Like, what level of quarterback is he really truly? And I know 49ers fans are going to say, all they do with Jimmy G is win. Well, shit. The Bears went to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as their starting quarterback. What the hell does that matter? I mean, seriously. Like, no, Garoppolo is not the same level of garbage as Rex Grossman. Believe me, I would never say that. But what I am saying is sometimes we create these narratives about these quarterbacks and all they do is win games. Well, when you step up and make big plays and make championship level plays, he didn't do it. And frankly, I can say the same thing about that defense. Like the
Defense is supposed to be what carried this team. The defense is what got this team there. The defense and the running game. And they were a non-factor in the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl. Like they got embarrassed. They got their shit pushed in. And you could say, well, that didn't even happen over the course of the entire fourth quarter. You're absolutely right. That's what makes it even worse. It was all second half of the fourth quarter collapse. And it was a collapse, believe me. And I worry that that's going to haunt this team. And where are the passing game weapons outside of George Kittle? I know I brought up Deebo Samuel, and I think he had flashes, but certainly didn't show himself at this moment at least to be a number one wide receiver. Are they ever going to get anything out of Dante Pettis that is significant and meaningful? Like you're expecting Ayuk to come in and make a big impact, and you know the history a lot of times with rookie wide receivers, especially a lot of notable ones, it can take a year or two for them to really develop and to grow into NFL players. And then I just talk about the Super Bowl losers' history. History is not on this team's side. And you can say, well, that's then and this is now. True, certainly. I just not totally vibing with this 49ers team. And if you're a Niners fan, I wasn't that big on them last year, and they ended up going to the Super Bowl, and they almost won the damn thing. So you shouldn't be that mad at me. You really want me to put the Jeff Jinx on them? Do you wanna? Do you wanna, Jeff Jinx? Do you? Well, here you go. I'm going to kind of split the difference in the middle. I see the 49ers being more of a 9-win football team. I do not see them repeating as division champs. I do not see them making a deep run in the playoffs. But I also don't see them totally bobbing out. I think they're somewhere in that 9-win range. Potentially could be one of the 3 wildcard teams in the NFC. So I don't want to totally dismiss them because they've still got a pretty good nucleus in core. And they've got a quality head coach. That is true. But I felt like a bit last year they benefited from luck as much as anything else to a certain degree. And now you're in a situation where you can't just get by on luck anymore. And I think that's going to catch up with them a little bit in 2020.